Good evening, my friends. Are you here for another spooky story? Then come on in. Settle in now, for tonight I have quite the tale to tell. Are you ready? Good. Then let us begin. No matter where you go in this world, there will always be people, both good and bad. Hopefully you will encounter far more of the former than the latter. Still, the near misses from those baddies, they can bring us good lessons and leave us with excellent stories to tell. That is, if you make it out of them alive. So gather round and listen well to Better Off Without Closure. This story was told to me many years ago by a transplant to the Appalachians. The woman in question had moved to the mountains after living in a big city for many years, and managed to get a business single-handedly off the ground in what was normally a fairly job-impoverished region. She had run-ins with unsavory characters throughout her career, but, unfortunately for her, she didn't quite understand that some things can't be handled with the mere threat of suing someone, like they can around urban folk. You see, in the backwoods, there are certain types of people. A few are generally helpful souls. Some don't get involved in much outside of their family and friends, prefer to keep to themselves. A few are rabble-rousers, varying between your jerks with hearts of gold and actual criminals with chips on their shoulders. And then there are those that nobody messes with, and for good reason. Which is unfortunately who this woman had the misfortune to tick off. After she retired from the big city and began building up her new homestead and business in the area, she bought herself a couple of small purebred dogs. They were toy breeds, the ones that yap a lot but make good lap dogs. I'll go ahead and warn you right now. If you like animals, then you're going to need to move along to the timestamp that I have provided at the start of this video. What I am about to say won't be graphic, but it's still very sad and not something to hear on a bad day. You still with me? Alright then, let's continue. This woman, we'll call her Muriel, liked to turn her little dogs outside and let them run loose. This normally isn't a major problem if the dogs are friendly around people, trained to not go too far, and are big enough to take care of themselves. But back there, toy breeds can be snapped up far too easily by coyotes, stray dogs, or even people who just see fancy dogs and want to make money off them by stealing and reselling them. Since she didn't live too close to the road and hardly anybody came back into that area that didn't live there, she thought it wasn't a big deal. Of course, her neighbors warned her that she needed to keep an eye on her dogs and not let them run loose like that. For, in addition to the normal dangers of the mountains, there was also a certain, shall we say, purveyor of unlawful psychedelic paraphernalia, who lived just a community over, along with his two huge guard dogs that were well trained to scare off or take down anything in the vicinity that their master did not forbid them. Now, here's where we get into some of the nuances of the backwoods organized crime. For the most part, if you stayed away from the handful of these folks we had around there, you didn't go near their property and just generally ignored them or, nodded your head in acknowledgement at the grocery store and went on with your life, they didn't mess with folks who weren't also part of the criminal element. Think the Yakuza. Just, you'd only have a handful of people coming down against you, instead of an entire unit if you did something stupid. Most of the time, if they needed the dirty work done, they did it themselves. And some were very good at it too. If you lived back in those parts, you knew where not to go and whom not to mess with. Even the cops didn't mess with some of these people for various reasons. Some were rather slippery, if you get my drift. Slip right out of custody and went right back to doing what they were doing. So Too Long didn't listen, There was a very strange symbiotic/parasitic relationship that these certain criminal types had with the outliers of the community. And this woman decided to chuck a figurative Molotov cocktail at one of these guys. At first, Muriel did sort of take the advice of one of her neighbors, to an extent. Now, of course, this was after she decided to go on a walk around the area and took her dogs off to growl and bark at Mr. Stayaway's guard dogs. She managed to get them back away, and the guy called his dogs off on them that once, but warned her and told her she needed to leave. This woman, though, she pretty much told him that the road was public domain and said his fierce dogs needed to be on a leash or something. It all could have ended there, especially after her neighbor kind of panicked on her, warning her about how close she had come and that she really didn't want to be messing with that guy because of who he was. It did unnerve her enough that she decided to put up a doggy gate on her porch to keep her pets closer by until she could figure out something. Perhaps contacting the city about new ordinance on dangerous dog breeds? Yes, Muriel was one of those people. Of course, the inevitable happened. One day, when she hadn't put the gate up and had forgotten to close the door all the way behind her, one of the dogs got it open and went to go play rough with the big guard dogs again. Only, the big dogs played a lot rougher than it did. A neighbor saw where the dog was headed and tried to call Muriel, but by the time he actually managed to reach her, and she was able to head after the dog, it was too late. Now, I get it. I've had animals that have been killed by motorist accidents and other animals. It's the main reason I don't like coyotes. And grief makes you say and do very stupid stuff sometimes. But threatening to sue a drug lord? That's a special sort of stupid if you ask me. Unfortunately, that's exactly what Muriel screamed at the guy as she was leaving. She called the police and they went to talk to him. A few days later, the big dogs were gone. A poor pittance for her, she felt. Like an idiot, she went walking back over there with her other dog. Of course, when the guy spotted her, he was furious. He told her he had warned her, and now she was the reason all 3 dogs were gone. Muriel told him to keep talking, because her lawyer would be in touch with him soon. I bet you guys can guess where this is going, huh? You know, for someone who apparently lived in a city where she had these so-called run-ins with a criminal element, and lived in the backwoods near a freaking drug dealer, you would think she would have, I don't know, put up a camera system? But no, she figured that she would just yell threats at the guy, get his dogs taken away, and sue him for all he was worth. I guess she forgot that just because someone doesn't verbally threaten you after you inflict a blow upon them, doesn't mean they are going to sit back and do nothing. One morning, a few weeks after this exchange, Muriel walked out and got in her car, ready to head to work. Only, as she started to pull out of the driveway, she realized that she couldn't stop her car. As the car picked up speed heading down her hill of a driveway, she saw the drop-off overhanging her neighbor's yard in sight. The way this yard was set up, you had her sloped driveway that went down to a dirt road, and then there was a deep drop-off of about 4 or 5 feet where someone had dug out part of the hill to make the road. Thankfully, her driveway didn't have more of an incline, and there happened to be a couple of trees close to the edge of the road that the occupants of the other house had left up because there wasn't yet a guardrail, and they had apparently had problems with a former neighbor losing control getting up into their driveway when it had iced over. Her car wound up smashing backwards into the tree, only narrowly stopping the rear tires from leaving the roadside entirely. It actually did only minimal damage too, which would have been quite another story had she been going faster. This meant she had to miss work and get her car towed to see what had caused it to malfunction. After a little while of waiting around to get her car fixed, The mechanic came back into the lobby with a very sobering look on his face. He beckoned her to follow him to her car and asked her if she had loaned anybody her car or had anybody do any work on it recently. She said no, and his expression darkened. Then he asked her, "Did you piss somebody off?" Before she could respond, she found herself looking at her brake lines. They'd been cut. As expected, Muriel went through the whole rigmarole of calling the cops and having them go over her car with a fine-tooth comb, but they, predictably, turned up nothing. The neighbors hadn't seen anybody, and the drug lord supposedly had a rock-solid alibi. Of course, that's just what was told to her, thus told to me. But everyone knew who had done it. Even if he himself had not done it, they were sure he could have gotten somebody to do it for him. This didn't stop Muriel from wanting to investigate, but everyone, including one of the police officers, told her that she needed to stop messing with the guy. I'm not sure if anything else happened, but Muriel put up a proper doggy-proof fence around the whole of her balcony after that. She continued to walk by the guy's house for a while after, but it was only a couple of months before he had 2 new guard dogs running around his property. And judging from the looks the guys gave her whenever she walked past, I think the dogs were the least of her worries. In the end, she gave up on snooping after the guy for revenge, and she never sued him. Or maybe she tried to, and the case didn't go anywhere, and she just told me she didn't do anything. It honestly seemed to be out of character for her to just let something go like that. But maybe she didn't want to admit any more defeat. Or maybe she just learned to keep her dogs up and leave some folks well enough alone. Now we've come to the end of the story. Thankfully, I only had to be around Muriel briefly because I got the feeling she was the sort to stir up trouble wherever she went. And I try not to be around people who like to stir up the bees before putting on the keeper's suit, if you get what I'm saying. If you like this video, please share it, like, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell too, so you can catch your latest spooky fix the moment it comes out. And go ahead and check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/phantasmalpoppy. Even pledging $1 a month can help me pay my bills, leaving me more time to bring you more quality content more often. Good night, and see you all real soon.